Joining me now is roll call columnist Jon Allen, senior editor for The Atlantic, Alex Wagner, and my colleague, Vladimir Duthiers. All right, let's get right to it. Alex, let me start with you. What did you think of the president's role tonight? He did play the role of attack dog, but also bolstering Hillary Clinton's credentials to be to be commander-in-chief. But at one point, in attacking Donald Trump, he had a very forceful line where he talked about whether fascists or communists or jihadists or homegrown demagogues will always fail in the end. Very, very forceful.
Yeah, well, and that is not the first time you heard the word demagogue tonight either. But coming from the President of the United States, it carries with it a certain weight. I'm sure there will be a lot of pushback from outside sources, including the Trump campaign on that. Look, I think one of the things the president was meant to do is remind Americans who are watching this of the sort of gravity of the office of president. There was a very kind of, Davis Guggenheim produced a video that ran before the president spoke, which was kind of a look back at the American presidency under Barack Obama and just the crises he's dealt with, as if to prove the point. Look, this is the kind of mettle you need if you are going to be the commander-in-chief. This is the level of patience. This is the, this is the strength, the inner strength you need to be able to tap if you are going to shepherd the country through what, by all accounts, is probably a pretty unpredictable future. And I think that that is sort of inherent in that was a sort of argument for Hillary Clinton, who, again, over and over again, they said was the most tested and the most qualified for the office, perhaps to draw a contrast with Donald Trump.
And, John, he pushed back on Donald Trump, who has repeatedly said, not just in his acceptance speech last week, but on the bully pulpit for weeks, that he's the one who can fix this country's problem. He's smarter than everybody. He knows how to make the best deals. He's the one who, doesn't need the Republican Party, doesn't need the establishment. And the president saying he's selling the American people short. We're not a fragile or frightened people. Our power doesn't come from some self-declared savior promising that he alone can restore order, sort of harkening back to our humble beginnings as a nation rejecting the monarchy back in the UK.
I'd say a couple of things about that. Number one, the president had that ridicule voice on tonight for a while with Donald Trump. He's so good at ridicule. It works so well for him. Number two, that's what people mocked President Obama for basically saying about himself in 2008, that he could come in and sort of save everybody. He was going to, the waters were going to recede and the heavens were going to be, brought down to the earth and everything. I think he's trying to say that Trump is even more sort of pie in the sky than he was back at the time. And then just one other thing to Alex's point, when he brought in fascists and dictators and communists, the jihadists, and compared Trump with them, it reminded me of when Republicans said of him that he was palling around with terrorists. When you put two things together in the same sentence, you're basically calling the person that other
guilt by association.
Exactly. And I thought that was interesting. I thought it was unusual for President Obama to go that far.
There was a point, Alex, that I kind of thought it was interesting to hear that tone, that mocking tone that John is talking about, when he seemed to be talking about the voters who support Donald Trump. He said, does anyone really believe that a guy who spent his 70 years on this earth showing no regard for working people is suddenly going to be your champion, your voice? If so, you should vote for him. But if you're someone who's truly concerned about paying your bills, seeing the economy grow, and creating more opportunity for everybody, then the choice isn't even close. And it wasn't just the way he said it. It wasn't just what he said, but the way he said it, too. I wonder, is there a risk at all, you think, Alex, in alienating maybe some voters that Hillary Clinton does need?
Yeah, yes. I mean, but I think this is the sentiment of frustration. You saw a little bit of this at the end of Joe Biden's remarks when he said, come on, we're America. He did it in a sort of more Biden-esque way, which was a little bit softer on the edges. But there's this sense of, like, rhetorically wanting to shake the shoulders of Trump supporters. And I think that that's what the president was trying to do right there. Whether it is an open question as to whether anybody who is a diehard Trump supporter will watch this convention and this president's speech and is even open to being convinced at this point, given the huge cleave between the two parties at this point. I mean, looking at this convention, having been in Cleveland as we all were, it is like parallel universes. The difference in tone and tenor and vision and assessment about what needs to happen in the coming years.
And John, he reached out to Bernie supporters. He got a big cheer when he talked about Bernie Sanders. He said, if you agree there's too much inequality in our economy and too much money in our politics, we all need to be as vocal and organized and as persistent as Bernie Sanders supporters have been. That seemed to get the crowd excited. They had been, up until that point, holding up signs with the no TPP, and some people were still doing that, but not as many as had been over the last hour or so. A
little bit less clear, but just as true as Obama's support for Clinton in this process, quietly behind the scenes, is Obama's belief in the idea that people can rise up and make change, and in his belief that the campaign finance system is corrupt. And I think he really liked what Bernie Sanders was doing in terms of putting some of these issues up to the forefront. I don't think TPP was one of them, because Bernie Sanders and his supporters disagree with the president on TPP. But I think he admires what Bernie Sanders was able to do on some of those things in terms of getting people fired up. I am sure the president was as taken by surprise by the Bernie Sanders phenomenon as everybody else was.
Were you surprised, John, that he also, and Alex, maybe I'll ask you this as well, were you surprised that he did point out that Hillary Clinton has made mistakes? He says, we all have made it. She's made mistakes, and he had that line where he said she's been caricatured and has had things said about her, and everything you can imagine and some that you can't, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think this is like the Democrats dancing around the issue, dancing around hashtag real talk.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, I think there is a concession to the fact that a lot of people are deeply unhappy with where the country is at, but he has to thread a careful needle, which is look at all that we've accomplished. And a few times at the beginning of his remarks and even at the end, he said, we have more work to do.
Right.
So acknowledging flaws and shortcomings and, needs work areas with the country, with the candidate, I think is, this is a new part of the sort of democratic truth-telling, if you will.
John, I want to mention that as, in fact, the president there was exiting the stage, we got a tweet from First Lady Michelle Obama, and I want to show it to our viewers. It reads, "That's my man. Your truth, dignity, and grace reminds us what real leadership looks like. I am always proud of our POTUS." And then I have another tweet here from Hillary Clinton that reads, "We love you back, a POTUS." There's a picture of them on the stage. So the question I have, John, given the energy that we saw in this room tonight, given the chance of yes, we can, which of course was his own sort of campaign battle cry, how critical is it for Hillary Clinton to try to harness some of that energy and excitement and enthusiasm that they saw in this room tonight well after this convention is over?
I mean, that's what conventions are about, right? You get your team together, you tell them they're all together, you tell them what the plan is, you tell them how bad the opponents are, and you run out onto the field and you pray that they know what the blocking and tackling are and that they show up at the right places.
Right.
And I think, that's what we've seen from this convention so far. It was a nice tweet from Michelle Obama, the tweet of somebody who had a better speech than her husband, magnanimously saying he did a good job, I think. But, yeah, I mean, the convention is doing what it's supposed to do, which is unify the Democratic Party. I don't think they're going to walk out of here split. I think some of them walked in here split, and I think you're talking about a very, very small fringe of Democrats that aren't going to be ready to go to war with Donald Trump.
I just want to point out, sorry, I was going to say, I just want to point out, we were wondering if Donald Trump was going to tweet. I'm looking at his Twitter feed right now. He's retweeting. He hasn't actually tweeted somebody. He tweeted at David Wohl, Barack is offended that at real Donald Trump will demand that NATO allies pay their fair share, Dems in Philly. I mean, not really addressing anything.
That's a fairly,
restrained,
non-confrontational,
exactly.
policy-driven tweet from Donald Trump.
Yeah, there it is, right?
One can only imagine what that must be.
Just a NATO tweet.
Yeah.
Which is a surprising tweet coming as given what's been on offer tonight. I would just add one thing to John's, I think, accurate diagnosis of what conventions are for. Conventions are also for post-convention poll bounces. And Hillary Clinton would really like to see some of the shine from tonight wear off on her in the form of numbers. I mean, she wants to see an uptrend after this.